Hello everybody, welcome to Pokemon Invaders from the Depths. My name is Lucas, I'm one of the team members here at the Sprites of Life podcast. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day whenever you're getting a chance to listen. Today we are going to be talking a bit about Pokemon found in Scarlet and Violet, the ones found in Area 0, and how they relate to invasive species in our own world. There are two reasons why we're doing this talk. Number one, when we did our talk for the multiplayer network on Pokemon conservation, you all really seemed to enjoy it, and we thought we'd put out another one to see if you all enjoy this one too. The second reason we wanted to do this was because somebody brought up in the comments that I did not talk enough about Scarlet and Violet about conservation, and they were correct. I was focused more on other games from the past, and I didn't give it the time of day it required, and I said some stuff that wasn't correct, but I am very proud of that video either way, but I still want to talk about Scarlet and Violet because they did do something very different in terms of the villain of this game. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, we did a video on Pokemon conservation, talking about how real-world organisms can be related to Pokemon, and how you could talk about their conservation efforts through Pokedex entry. If you want to check on that, there'll be a link down below. But what are we talking about today? So first things first, we're going to talk about what exactly is an invasive species, and how these two dingleberries kind of made a real problem in the game. We're also going to be talking about the dangers of the Paradox Pokemon, how these organisms can cause a whole lot of issues in just about any ecosystem they ended up in. We're also going to talk about other invaders in the Pokemon world, different Pokemon that are related to real-world animals that have caused quite a few problems for both the ecosystem and for humans. And we'll end up with how you, yes you, can help and improve the environment in your own way without having to stretch too far out of your own comfort zone. Without any further ado, let's talk about invasive species. Now, when you talk about invasive species, there are a lot of terms you should be familiar with. The two you want to know are exotic and invasive. Now, both of them can be classified as non-native as well. The big important thing is what it means to be a non-native species. An organism that develops over evolutionary time in a region other than the one in which it is found. So, both exotic and invasive organisms are considered non-native. The big difference is that an exotic just has this definition. It causes no harm to the ecosystem around it. If you want a case in point, the potato. Potatoes are originally from South America. They were brought over to Europe, but you don't have to deal with widespread potatoes taking over and killing everything else. Potatoes don't cause any issue. There might be humans destroying a forest to grow more potatoes, but that's not in and of itself the potato's fault. An invasive species is a non-native organism, but it's one whose introduction causes or is likely to cause economic, environmental harm, or human harm. Fire ants are a really good example of an invasive species that we all can kind of have seen in our daily lives. These ants were originally brought from plants and organisms who were taking a ride across the Atlantic from South America, and they eventually ended up in our backyards and have since taken over large swaths of the United States, parts of Europe, etc. That's the big difference. So sometimes you can interchange them. There are some turtles that are exotic in one area and invasive in another, and vice versa. And so those are the two terms you really understand. And invasive species are what we'll focus on today. Because trust me, the Paradox Pokemon, they ain't no potatoes. Now, Scarlet and Violet didn't have your traditional villains. Team Star are not villains. They're misunderstood. I don't know. I don't really like the bullied turning to bullies trope. It's a bit done. But these two dorks are the ones who caused the most harm in the entire game. The professors in Scarlet and Violet decided to do the dumbest thing with the time machine I can think of. While building a time machine, super impressive, really pretty, they decided to use it to draw animals from different times and plop them down. Not only that, they built a robot to make sure that if anything were to try and stop this from happening, it would also stop them violently. That is ridiculously foolish. Now, in their defense, they did start this project in Area 0, a location which had no people living in it, deep, dark, dangerous hole filled with powerful crystals. No one's going to go bother you down there. But that kind of changes when there's paths leading up out of Area 0. There are ways for these creatures to get out, which they clearly have. So what exactly did they release in Area 0? Well, Just a robot apocalypse, and then why not throw in a couple of horrifying cave Pokemon? Now, as far as their designs go overall, I will say they both kind of mirror stereotypes of the future and the past. The robots all are from the future. They're just machines at this point. I think Pokemon missed a real opportunity to show off, hey, here's how adaptations in the future change. There's a lot of fun you can have with that. But I understand that they wanted to go, this is the future. Here come the robot mecha death squads coming for us. But the past Pokemon are not blameless either. They also share a lot of stereotypes of what we think of the past. They all have sharp teeth and claws. They're all vicious and violent and dangerous and spiky and hard. And that's like a Flintstone mindset of the past. That's like, oh, everything has saber teeth. There's a saber-toothed squirrel and a saber-toothed mushroom and a saber-toothed tree. That's not what the past was. There were many different ways that these organisms survived, just like our ecosystem. Not everything in our ecosystem is defined by one feature. There are many different features. It just tends to be the mindset that everything in the past had to have been fierce and hard to live in a world without electricity. And the robots are from the future, and they're stronger than flesh, and they got rid of us all. They're both stereotypes, but they both do quite a bit of harm. So let's talk about some of the harm these organisms can do. Let's pop open the portal and see what we get. All right, so Great Tusk. Really cool Pokemon to talk about because it does kind of envelop the whole idea of what happens when you let an organism loose and it's way better than all the other ones around him. In other words, competition. When you first find this thing, it is massive and horrifying and scary. Now, granted, the herbs made it that way, and if you go back, you find ones that are more normal size. But still, in reality, this thing's like 7 feet tall and very, very dangerous. Now, if you look at the region it's in, it's dry. There's not a lot of people there. It's not causing too much of a ruckus. But look at all these Pokemon that live in that area. Very few of them are capable of taking this thing down. Braviary at a high enough level could do it. Bramblin might be able to pull it off. But everything else is either neutral or weak to it in some way. This thing knows fighting type moves, ground moves, earth moves. This thing is dangerous to a lot of the organisms that are out there. And there's nothing there that could match the level, strength, or speed of it. That's what competition is for a lot of animals. If you cannot compete, you're going to get turned to mulch. You're going to get your food taken away from you. A really good example of that in a lot of people's backyards and rivers is this guy, the bullfrog. Bullfrogs are an invasive species throughout many parts of North America. While they're not found everywhere, they're found everywhere now because people decided to bring them along as pets. They got loose, bred a whole bunch, and now native amphibians can't compete. This thing is much bigger, stronger, has a heartier appetite than them, and this is the idea of what happens when you let a big, strong creature loose. It is a huge problem for everybody else around it. Now, of course, the past is not the only one to blame. We did have the future, and the future kind of brought up an issue in terms of how it could affect people. So let's pop something out from the portal. All right, so we have Iron Thorns. Love the design. That's why I chose it. I could have picked any of the robots, to be honest, but I just love Iron Thorns, so we're going to use him. He brings up economic costs. Now, invasive species don't just cause issues for animals, they do cause people problems as well. So you have so many cities and infrastructures, and these things feed off electricity. So what's stopping them from marching in and consuming all the electricity in a nearby city and then just walking away? Now, a large city might have some kind of defensive grid for bigger Pokemon, but these smaller towns might not. Now, there are plenty of Pokemon that live in cities, as there are animals that live in cities. There are animals that have adapted and learned to survive in an urban ecosystem, but most of them have learned to survive in it, not destroy it. These future Pokemon would all swarm to every major city they could. And keep in mind, these aren't legendary Pokemon. These are Pokemon that are literally like everyday Pokemon. So there would be more than just one Iron Thorns rambling through, destroying things. A really good example of economic cost to people would actually be termites. Termites aren't originally from here, at least the major damage-causing species are. They cause billions of dollars in damages. Billions with a B from all the wood they consume. It's not their fault. It's just what they need to eat to survive, just like this here spiky future Tyranitar. But it is something to keep in mind. When you let something loose like that that needs to feed on a resource, that resource could get eaten up. All right, one more time. Let's go back to the past, because this one is probably the worst of them for just about everybody. And that is Brute Bonnet. Brute Bonnet, I got to ask, which came first, the Voltorb or the Brute Bonnet? Let me know in the comments, because, like, there's a really cool balance to which one came first. But that's not what we're going to talk about right now. I want to talk about disease. Pokemon get sick. Pokemon have gotten sick in the anime. They've gotten sick in the games. They've gotten sick in the cards. Whatever. They're always some kind of sickness that can affect them. But a fungus, especially a new fungus, could be a sickness that their bodies aren't adapted to fighting. If you look in the pictures, Pikachu is charging up electricity. It's not able to store properly. That's the body's response to trying to kill off an infection. But what happens when the body's never met something like that before? So we see this a lot, but we see it especially with bats. There's a species of fungus out there, and I'm not going to pronounce that because I don't want to sound silly, but it has this ability to grow in cold ecosystems. And when it grows on bats and anything else, and the bats are usually hibernating this time. So they wake up, waste their energy cleaning themselves off, try and go back to sleep. They can't, and they pass away because they don't have any more energy to survive. That's a huge problem for these organisms because now they're wasting all their energy trying to be clean from something they've never even met before and don't have any resistance towards. Now, in the Pokemon world, we have amphibians, lots and lots of amphibious Pokemon. And in our world, we are dealing with funguses that are not normally in areas, getting into the air and into the semi-permeable skin of these amphibians. So what happens if this Pokemon uses Spore, and instead of going to sleep, they just go down? This organism, it's under no fault of its own, is using something that would normally putting something to sleep, but our bodies would have not have adjusted to that for millions of years. And so that's why this thing is so dangerous. The Pokemon of the Paldea region would be absolutely decimated by these things being let loose. Even just one or two of them could cause irreparable harm. So yeah, I stand by the fact that the professors are both evil, dumb people. They messed up. Even maybe not intentionally, but they did mess up pretty hard. So with that being said, we do have to talk about some of the other Pokemon that are based off some invasive species. Some of you know, some of you might not know. Let's see what's in the tube and find out. Alright, so we got Alolan Meowth. Now, I could have used the normal Meowth, but I wanted to use this one for a specific reason. So, the Scratch Cat Pokemon, deeply proud and keenly smart, this Pokemon moves with cunning during battle and relentlessly attacks enemies' weak points. Sounds like a cat to me. Now, in the game's lore, this Pokemon was brought to the islands. It was loved. It was taken care of. It was a symbol of respect and status. And in Hawaii, they were brought to the islands as well. And that's where the problem started. When the cats are let loose in the wild, they tend to go and consume basically anything they can, especially if they're house cats and they're let out at night. That means they can hunt as they please. And even if they're not successful, they can go home, eat a meal, get their strength, and go back and hunt some more. And this isn't an island issue. This is like a major issue throughout the world. Poland deemed these animals like a dangerous alien species. And I know there are plenty of cat people listening because this is the internet, but cats are super destructive. They really are. I love how cute they are. And I like the ones that let me pick them up, but they're pretty tough. So I kind of adjusted the Pokedex entry just a touch. So this Pokemon comes from a faraway region. While it is loved by the people of Alola, it has been known to attack other Pokemon and trainers for even the smallest slight. So this reflects on the real world aspect while also still keeping to this Pokemon's roots. I don't like to change Pokedex entries too much because I find it's like against what the game would really be about, but I like to add some realism. Oh, and for the dog people laughing in the corner, yeah, y'all ain't off the hook. Plenty of dogs have also been let loose. Think the dingoes of Australia, for starters, that have just been out there causing issues. And anyone down south from Florida is going to definitely know about the snake problems of the Burmese python. Plenty of people have brought pets, let them loose, and caused problems. It's not just cats that are the issue. They're just one of the biggest ones. Now, moving away from all of that, let's see what else is in the tube. Let's see what other creatures we got. All right, Lechonk is probably one of the new fan favorites. Look at him, so round and cute. But he is a pig, which means we get to talk about just how tough those guys are. So the hog Pokemon, it searches for food all day. It possesses a keen sense of smell, but doesn't use it for anything other than foraging. Pigs are probably some of the most underrated animals in the world because of just how tough they are. They are better problem solvers than dogs. They breed very quickly. They eat literally anything, even human waste. They do not care. They are resistant to snake bites and most diseases. That's why when Spain brought them to the United States and South America in 1500s, they just let them loose everywhere to just have a food source ready for them because they knew if they just dropped them off anywhere, they will just have so many babies and be just fine. Now, we've been dealing with that problem for 500 years. Yeah, Lechonk got a bit wild when you let them loose long enough, and they are very tough and also very protective of their young. They will destroy entire fields, entire forests can be ravaged by these animals just searching and foraging for food. And the problem ain't going away anytime soon. If you live in any of these areas in blue, you got hog problems. Pretty much all of the southeast has to deal with this and have to watch out for their crops, and you have to be protective. A lot of people's livelihoods are at stake, but also a lot of organisms have had to learn to adapt to just dealing with something that can just root right up the roots and take it all out. So I added this dex entry to kind of balance out. So outside of Paldea, this Pokemon has been known to cause quite a few problems. In other regions, they are known to rip up entire fields in a single night. And yeah, in Spain and Europe, the pigs aren't as big of an issue because they are controlled. There are plants that are sturdy enough to hide from them. There are predators that can go after them a bit more. In the United States, there aren't as many, and thus they are allowed to go kind of unchecked. And there are plenty of other organisms that were brought for food that have caused issues. In Australia, they let loose a bunch of rabbits to the point where there were so many, some places claimed that they could always see the ground moving because of how many rabbits there were. And crayfish, crawdads, whatever you want to call them, they were literally so tasty that people from Europe took them back with them, let them loose, and now they've become a huge problem in their ecosystem. Very little can compete in the ecosystem with a crayfish. They're super durable. They can handle high levels of pollutants. They can deal with just about anything you throw at them. The only thing they can't deal with is a nice jambalaya, apparently. All right, last one. Last one down the tube. Yes! Buzzwole, my boy. I love this Pokemon. I never get to talk about these beasts as much as I should because these guys, just look at them. That's peak design. Whoever said Gen 1 had the best designs clearly did not see this slab of mosquito muscle. So the swollen Pokemon, although it's alien to this world and a danger here, it's apparently a common organism in the world where it normally lives. Now, by now, you've all been bit by a mosquito at least once, and you probably wish they were going away. But I hate to break it to you, every continent has them, but there are new ones that have been introduced to North America. So, not just North America, but also parts of Europe too. The Asian tiger mosquito also has the same markings as our Buzzwole friend here. This is an organism that has piggybacked off people moving and has spread throughout many different parts of the world. You can look at the map yourself and see just how far these organisms have gone from living in Asia. And now they're spread out on every single continent. And so we've run into more diseases spreading from these organisms too. And honestly, I don't need to change one thing about this Pokedex entry, because this is how you describe an invasive species to someone who doesn't know what it is. In its own environment, normal, everything deals with it just fine. But in anywhere it goes, a different world, a different environment, it becomes a major issue. Sure, in Pokemon, I probably wouldn't want to go to any world where this thing is like the Caterpie of its world. But I really do think it's important to keep in mind that there are many quote-unquote Caterpies of this world that are living in one area that become the Buzzwoles in another, depending on when and how they're moved. Now, there are also organisms as well, things like rats and anoles that have been brought here on accident. For those of you wondering what the anoles did, well, the anoles tend to be, the brown ones running around are from Cuba. The green ones are native. So it's important to keep that in mind if you're ever down south like I am. Now, what does all this have to do with the Pokemon games? Honestly, I just think Pokemon's one of the best tools for teaching when it comes to any sort of environmental issue, so I'm going to keep using it as long as I can. Anyway, here's some things you can do that can help out with an ecosystem. Number one, keep your pets indoors. I understand their need for exercise, getting out, train your cat to be on a harness, take them out for frequent walks. Understand that if you're having an exotic pet, you better be taking care of it. You better be keeping it. You better not let it loose. These organisms cause so many issues wherever they go. They're your pets. Love them properly. Step two is what's living in your area. And is it native? Most people don't realize that honeybees aren't native. There are native bee species that live throughout the United States. Yeah, but honeybees aren't one of them. Keep in mind, you should probably know which ones are native, which ones are not, which ones need assistance, and which ones are getting plenty of it. Everyone's going to have some invasive species around them. See if you can help the native ones out. On that note, you really should help however you can. I think it's important to realize that growing native plants is also really good. We think of invasive animals, but there are plenty of invasive plants and fungi as well. Planting those native species not only helps these organisms thrive, but it also helps out in the case of lawns, because lawns stink. Lawns are terrible. They look nice, but the wild grasses are the ones that are actually holding the root system down, holding the soil down. It's much more productive for you in most areas. So find your native plant life, find your native animals. The last thing, seriously, don't let your cats out at night. I'm so serious. I understand that by saying this, there's going to be someone who types in, well, my cat is, but no. The second you say, well, not my cat, you're part of the problem. The second you say, well, it's not mine, you're part of the problem. You have to keep them indoors. Literally, these animals attack penguin nests, and I don't know how else to make people sympathize with an animal other than they're attacking baby penguins. The only thing that's possibly cuter than a kitten. So just keep that in mind. Leave your pets inside. Pretty please. On that less than happy note, I do want to thank you all for coming and listening. We are not only on Spotify, but we are on iTunes. We're on the Amazon Play. We're on Google Play. Go ahead and look us up. We love getting a chance to talk about the things we talk about. We are on Discord. And of course, if you have any questions, let us know. Let us know in the comments. We love listening and reading to those. Thank you all so much for being a part of this. Have a wonderful rest of your day or night. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everybody.